Yeah, this was a request on a etiquette tanking kind of thing. Oh, actually, I have it up here. It was, they asked, can you make either a video on a random dungeon slash raid etiquette, or at least touch on it on a relevant video? And then they talked about, they did some stuff on a DK and it was bad. Blah blah blah. Don't you realize that tanks won't queue anywhere if randoms? Blah, 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 blah. So it's something about like, you know. Don't be a jackass, because otherwise tanks aren't going to like you, and then they're not going to want to they're not going to want to queue for randoms, and then that just makes a bad experience and it causes tank shortages and so on and so forth. I don't really think it's so much about that. I'm going to focus more on the etiquette part of not just tanking but grouping, because it's not like, I don't want to intend this to be something like, oh, this is how players should be behaving around tanks because I'm the great one, and you should not spite me, otherwise your experience in the World of Warcraft is going to be terrible. It's a two-way street. It should be about both. I mean, it should be about the tanks and the healers and the DPS, but of course I'm going to be talking about tanks mostly. But I want to talk about what everyone should be doing to just not be jerks and to have a decent experience, right? I don't know, maybe this is going to be like the 10 commandments, thou shall not something, but I'm probably not going to use that kind of wordage. That sounds lame. So I guess this is going to be like the guidelines, not the rules, but guidelines for proper group etiquette, I suppose. And I'll speak as a tank and as a non-tank. I guess I'll go with the expectations that I have versus the expectations that I'm pretty sure that other people would have of me as a tank. So I guess the first thing that I would tell people is that you probably don't know who your tank is. This is a random person in your group, right? Whether it's the group finder or whether it's LFR, LFG, whatever. You don't know them. You don't know how they are. You don't know how they're going to react to certain things, or you're just not sure. And the same goes for me, the tank. I don't know my group. I don't know who you guys are. I don't know how well you play. I don't know if you guys are like raging dicks or if you're just like total noobs. So when you first join into a group, you got to make the assumption that it's a blank slate, and you just don't want to make a bad first impression at all. That sets, because just like tanking an instance or a raid or an encounter, making a bad first impression, it affects the rest. It can easily affect the rest of the run, and that spoils things. That spoils the experience for everybody. Well, I think all of it's super important. I'm not going to do a top 10 on this, because everything can be more important than the other depending on the situation. Like in this case, you're making a good first impression. You want to make a good first impression, even if you're like super geared and you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm a super geared tank or a deeps or a healer. I could just carry the group, and that's okay. But you still don't want to go in with that sort of attitude, like, oh, I'm better than all of you. Welcome to my run. I'm going to control everything, and you guys should just like stay down there and just bask in my greatness. That shouldn't be how it is, even though it sometimes is. You just got to try and curb that kind of behavior as much as possible, because again, it's all about the experience. I think the group has a certain expectation of me as the tank, that if stuff hits the fan, I'm going to do all the tricks and use the skills that are available to me, the toolkit, in order to stay alive, in order to control the fight, in order to get aggro off of one other such person. Because if I don't, it's like what good am I? All I am is a DPS with all the aggro, and I happen to have a little bit more health. You got to use your toolkit, and the same is going to go for everyone else. You really want to go. I would strongly suggest that folks go in with the mindset that I may have to use everything in my toolkit, everything in my spellbook in order to get through this, even if it seems easy or menial. Those things just help the run go faster. It helps everything go smoother. Everyone will have just a much better experience. Not using your toolkit is tantamount to just kind of being AFK, or just auto attacking, or just being lazy. And all of us queue up for these things because we want to get through it. Whether or not we have the necessary throughput to carry the group, or if we're just kind of getting by, or if we're like brand new and we're getting our feet wet. people need to put in that modicum of effort in order to get through. As a tank, I have the strong expectation that the folks on my team, they shouldn't make the rookie mistakes. They shouldn't be standing in very obvious looking fire. They shouldn't have growl on for their pets. That doesn't do anybody any good. It doesn't make you look like a badass because your turtle is holding on to something, and I'm standing there just trying to taunt it off, and I'm having trouble and all that. You know, as a tank, I do want to have control of. I do want to control each pull, control each part of the encounter, and of course it's not going to do any good if someone's just doing like totally stupid stuff. In the same vein, though, just because someone makes a really stupid mistake does not mean in situation that I should just play the passive-aggressive role and be like, well, I'm just going to let them die because they're being a noob, or they pulled off of me, or they're hitting the wrong target, so they deserve to die. No, that's for me at least, that's not the way to do it. My role as a tank is to save people's asses, and part of it is to save people from themselves. If I'm going to call someone out, okay, cool, maybe I'll call someone out, or maybe not. Maybe I just want to get the job done, and I'm not going and just kind of bad-mouthing someone or bringing out that sort of negativity just for the sake of talking shit and making me feel better. It's not really going to make me feel better. It's just going to make for a more negative experience. It doesn't have to be. Even if we seem kind of irritated, or we find that kind of behavior obnoxious, let's just get through this and move on with our lives. All right. Typically, as the tank, I'm the leader. Tanks are typically the leader in small group content, in dungeons and such. The role is a lot more mixed when it comes to not exactly LFR stuff, but raids, group content, things with the group finder, where it could be anyone who just happens to be experienced or super geared. They may have that role, but at least with small group content, at least the perspective that I have is that the tank is the lead. They set the pace. They set everything up when it comes to the general positioning and the tactics, and hopefully everyone's on the same page. That's kind of important. And whenever I as a tank am doing something that might seem a little bit less familiar, or if I'm doing somewhat harder content, or if I can tell that the group is a little bit less geared, because that's something that I definitely need to keep track of, I'll do things like throw out marks or something like that. That's probably the easiest way of communication. If you set like a quick macro to marks, your skull and X and your CC targets and stuff like that, that goes a long way, because one, you're demonstrating a little bit of leadership. Two, you're controlling the fight a little bit more. And three, if someone isn't listening, then you can call them out and say, hey, you know what, I marked that thing. Kill that, can you please hit that mark? Because typically, if you mark something's skull, that's usually a good sign that it's like, hey, I better kill skull. It's usually not, oh, there's skulls right over there. I better not hit them, or I better CC them. I guess depending on the dynamic, or depending on where you're coming from, maybe that's how it is. But typically, that kind of easy communication goes a long way. But if there do happen to be issues, like if this was a more advanced run, like a Mythic Plus dungeon, and you're struggling, or you're having a hard time, I think it would be good as a tank to listen to any suggestions that might be coming from more experienced players. Like, hey, go this route because you can skip these packs, or hey, mark this target instead because this is the more deadly ad that needs to be that needs to be stun locked or controlled while everyone's killing everything else. I guess this kind of rolls into the next thing about setting expectations. Like, let's say you're new to an encounter or an instance, or if you're just brand new to tanking, period, you should really tell your group this. Definitely tell them, hey, you know what? I only have this much gear. I don't quite know this instance. I don't know this encounter. I don't know this boss. Can you talk me through? Can someone talk me through? Even if, and sometimes you'll get snarky answers. You'll be like, well, just hit it and don't die. Sometimes you'll get stupid shit like that, but at least you're communicating and you're letting people know, you're being honest. You're not setting bad expectations by not saying anything, because that would be the worst thing. And even if that results, like let's say you do this at the beginning of the run, and as a tank, you say, hey, you know what, I'm kind of new to this, bear with me, folks. And then one or two people are like, oh, fuck this guy, they don't know what they're doing, noob, and then they leave. Good. That means that there are that's two less helpful people that are in your run, and hopefully the next two people that join up with you are a little bit more open or are a little bit more interested, because what when it really comes down to it, we're all trying to get this shit done together, right? And alienating a tank or making any player not feel good about themselves discourages them from queuing up for this content, participating, and then your total pool gets smaller. It's important that even though some of us have that kind of competitive nature, even though we're doing cooperative content, in the end, if you want a smooth run, you probably don't want to badmouth the people that are fighting alongside you. So on the flip side, and I guess I'm kind of saying this again, if the tank is inexperienced or they don't have the gear, please give them some room, man, because I'm sure a lot of folks know that between tanks and healers, there just aren't nearly as many of them as there are DPS folks. So do yourself a favor and don't shit talk them too much. Don't give them too hard of a time. You know, try to help them. Try to be encouraging. Give them constructive feedback if they're like screwing up. Just don't shit all over them, man. It's just not cool. If nothing else, at least appreciate or acknowledge the fact that your tank admitted that they don't have the experience or the gear or the knowledge for these encounters. That really goes a long way. Regarding speed, the way I see it, if I'm going too slow as a tank, if I'm going too slow, that's your problem, not mine. I'm going as fast as I'm going, typically, right? Unless I'm like super drunk or something, I'm going at my speed. And if you have a problem with that, then you have a problem with that. That's not a problem that we're having with the run, unless we're trying to complete a keystone dungeon or something. And then from there, you know, provide inputs and all that stuff. But in general, if we're just talking about like the random heroic of the day or something, if I'm going too slow, that's not my problem, because again, you know, as a tank, I'm trying to control the flow, and I'm trying to control, you know, you don't know what's going through my head. I might be like, okay, I can see that the healer is running low on mana, you know, fairly quickly, so I'm gonna wait a little bit while while they conserve mana or something like that. But if you're like a DPS or even a healer, if you're trying to rush me, if you're trying to, you know, pull stuff for me, that's one of the worst things that you can do to a tank, because you're taking away some of that control. And it's not even a matter of, oh well, I'm the alpha, I'm supposed to do this. It potentially disrupts the run. So okay, cool, you pulled all these mobs, but if the tank can't handle it, then whose fault is that? Unfortunately, it's going to be people are going to say it's the tank's fault. Oh, the tank died. Well, this guy sucks. You know, he can't even chain pull. But at the same time, I'm like, dude, why the hell is it my fault? You're the one who's like pulling shit and causing these problems when it really doesn't have to be. So no, I don't think that's a fair thing. But at the same time, if I as a tank am going too fast and there are problems, then that's my problem. That's all my fault, and not really their problem. So if I'm ignoring healer's mana, if I'm ignoring the DPS ability to lock mobs down or to just AoE stuff down quickly enough, and then we get overwhelmed and we wipe, that is all on me. That's all on the tank, because again, they control the fight. They're supposed to be able to assess and kind of deal with, okay, can we stay alive? Can we get these things down quickly enough? Okay, cool, not cool. And it really comes down to knowing your group. And in a pug, you want to, I strongly suggest not making those kinds of assumptions. It's like, oh well, they must have this kind of item level. They must be like awesome at their deeps, and maybe they are, but maybe they're having a bad day, or maybe they're drunk, or maybe maybe there's just something that's distracting them from doing the output that they're doing. So just start slow, as a tank at least. You know, start slow, get a feel of things at the beginning of the fight or the instance, and once you feel more comfortable and then you want to speed up, okay, go ahead. Because if you have problems and you're going too fast and you're rushing and you screw up, then that's all your goddamn fault. But for everyone else, don't rush the tank either. because even though you can try to blame them, it's not really their fault. It's yours. Don't be a jerk. That kind of goes into the most important thing, right? It's just don't be an asshole. You know, don't be a jerk to your group. This is regardless of your role, if you're a tank or DPS or healer or whatnot. Some of the worst things that can happen in an instance is just happens in that little chat box. That could be some of the nastiest stuff can come out of there, because you can only communicate in certain ways in game, right? Like by pulling bad or pulling passive aggressive behavior and things like that. But when you're like straight up bad mouthing folks over on chat, that just makes for like the most terrible experience. And all it really, and it's not like I'm gonna badmouth this person and then all of a sudden they're gonna get good. That's usually not what happens. It's usually, if I'm gonna badmouth someone, or if I'm gonna talk smack, they're probably gonna talk smack back at me, and then that's counterproductive. Meanwhile, everyone else who's just kind of staying out of the conversation is like, oh my god, it's one of these fucking runs, son of a bitch. And people don't like that. Nobody likes having that experience. No one comes away from that feeling good. You know, be like, oh yeah, I had a great run. You know, because this guy did something wrong and I was just shitting all over him and I was laughing and everyone came out of there feeling good. That's not really how that's not really how it goes. It's like, oh man, I had the worst experience and blah blah blah, and I was shitting on this person, and you know, they were saying this back and we were going back and forth, and no one feels good about that. Just don't be an asshole. That's, you know, if that's the one rule with grouping and anything in a game, on a team at work, any of that stuff, just don't be an asshole. All of us are just trying to cooperate, and being that asshole just doesn't help. Now that's pretty much it. I'm just gonna number this off and create a list out of it, and that's it. And then I'm gonna look at the camera and tell people like and sub and stay breezy.